Welcome to How Dogs Learn. I'm Katie Hood, and let's begin. Lesson 1. How Dogs Learn. Animals, including dogs, learn via the ABC method. A stands for antecedent, which is really just a sciencey word meaning the trigger or the cue. B is for behavior, and C stands for consequence. Consequences inform behavior and can be either positive or negative. We add a positive consequence in training to encourage a dog to perform the behavior more, and we call this a reinforcer. Similarly, the goal of a negative consequence would be to decrease the unwanted behavior, or in other words, we might punish a dog to reduce an unwanted behavior. Now remember, the consequence is from the point of view of the dog, not from the human. So let's take an example of a dog who jumps on people when they meet them. Breaking it down via the ABC method. Antecedent, or the trigger, is the person approaching. Behavior is the dog jumping up on the person, and many times the consequence is getting attention or pet while someone says, "It's okay, I love dogs." Now, in this case, the dog might learn the best way to get pets is to jump on people. So, what do? One solution would be to teach the dog an alternate behavior that is incompatible with the nuisance behavior. So, for example, by asking the dog to sit, they're then rewarded with attention. Let's look at when we teach our dog to come when called. In this case, the antecedent is the cue that we choose to use to call the dog. "Puppy, come!" The behavior is the dog running toward the owner, and here's where a consequence can be tricky. If I reward my dog for coming by giving her a treat or throwing the ball again, then it's likely my dog's going to learn that come is a good word. If, however, I leash my dog and leave the park every time I call her, it's possible that she will learn that come means we're leaving the park. In this case, her behavior may decrease over time because she's viewing the consequence of leaving the park as a punishment. That's why it's really important that we look at the association between the cue that we give and the consequence the dog receives, because dogs can make an association between the two. A lot of people think it's important to add a negative consequence for bad behavior, but punishment can be much more complicated than we think and has serious side effects referred to as behavioral fallout, which includes making an animal shut down and not want to learn at all. Let's look at an example of behavioral fallout from when we get a speeding ticket. A ticket is a negative consequence for speeding. Chances are it will act to reduce your behavior of speeding, right? Now, this should be a good thing because we don't want people speeding. Except take note of your emotional response the next time you see a police officer. Do you feel nervous? Are you worried that you're doing something wrong even though you're not? When an individual that is learning is punished, it can have a real impact on their ability to function, such as shutting down, feeling anxious, nervous, or confused. You cannot learn new behaviors in this emotional state. This is why we must avoid adding negative consequences and focus on setting our dog up for success by arranging or managing the environment for them to succeed and reinforcing good behavior. We need to take the approach of teaching dogs instead of putting them in situations where they make mistakes. So let's just summarize everything we've learned today, because it may be a lot of new information coming at you at once. We talked about the ABC method, how dogs learn. Antecedent, which remember is just a fancy word for a trigger or a cue, and then behavior and consequence. We have positive consequences, also referred to as reinforcers, and we have negative consequences, punishers. Reinforcers increase behavior, and punishers decrease behavior. We want to avoid punishments. They can cause emotional association with triggers, and they can have serious behavioral fallout. We want to set our dogs up for success by arranging the environment and teaching alternate behaviors.